Well, welcome back for part 2 of Elephants, Addictions, and Garbage in the Pool. All right, last week we stopped right in the middle of talking about how the freedoms that God gives us can turn into the chains that bind us when exercising our freedom to choose becomes a license to abuse. Remember we talked about that? Right. Today we're going to talk about some more of those chains. Look at Proverbs 4:23 and 24. Above all else, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life. Put away perversity from your mouth. Keep corrupt talk from your lips. Proverbs 10:31 and 32. The mouth of the righteous brings forth wisdom, but a perverse tongue will be cut out. The lips of the righteous will know what is fitting, but the mouth of the wicked only what is perverse. All right, now why those verses? 4 years on an aircraft carrier in the Persian Gulf helped equip me with a vocabulary that was unfit for most social situations or environments where normal people exist and function. It didn't take long for me to be in this environment for it to become my daily demeanor. All right, I could literally blister the paint on the wall or peel the wallpaper off the wall with the language that came out of my mouth. The problem is that once you get into this, it's like every other habit, it becomes very difficult to break. And it never fails to raise its ugly invitation in my life in some other situations. Jesus rescued my soul. All right? He ransomed my life. All right? There's no doubt. But the enemy never fails to take advantage of and to try to invite my sinful nature to exercise its freedom to choose and become a captive one more time in that prison in which I used to exist. We all make the choices for our lives. We all make those decisions, and those decisions come with consequences. Right? Look at Proverbs 18:6 and 7. A fool's lips bring him strife, and his mouth invites a beating. A fool's mouth is his undoing, and his lips are a snare to his soul. See, God has given us the ability to communicate with language. But if we're not careful, the habits that we create from the choices that are available, they can become the chains that bind us and hold us hostage. Let's look at another chain. All right? Something else that's actually designed to be a freedom for us to enjoy, but can also be a chain that can tie us down. Sex. The sexual appetite functions in the center of our brain where addictions to alcohol, narcotics, and nicotine is identified. Stimulation produces what? Pleasure, right? Don't say it in church. Listen, this is a cause and effect. This is actually how God created it to be. But the problem is that when misinformation and misperception, along with faulty expectations, they become associated with this connection in a wrong, in an incorrect fashion, then that means that pleasure becomes a pothole that's so perpetual and so deep that breaking an ankle is a foregone conclusion. You can count on it, but the problem is it's just the beginning of your problems. From addictions to pornography to sexual promiscuity, listen, sexual freedom without boundaries is only going to produce damage instead of the unparalleled gift that God intended sex to be. Really? Is it all that serious? I mean, everybody does it, right? Listen, homosexuality is the result of sexual boundaries run amok. Whether it was through uninvited trauma or early and frequent exposure or just exploration without boundaries, the truth is that misuse of sex is the reason why homosexuality exists in today's society. Now, today's homosexual community will insist that what I've just said is not only inaccurate, but they'll say it's insensitive, it's inappropriate, and it's hateful. Their relationships, according to them, are based on love and mutual respect. But I say that, listen, if you dig deep enough, you will find an instance, a day, a time, an instance when somebody sexually victimized them in some way that got them headed down the path of where they are now. Because nobody, hear it, nobody was born this way. It's an excuse for not facing, admitting, and dealing with an issue that has now become such a hold on their lives. Here's what you need to understand. It is always easier to justify our circumstances by attaching a variable that's beyond our control, but it doesn't change the truth and it doesn't fix the issue. Are you understanding? All right, listen, I don't have a lot of time to expound now, but we're going to look at this topic of homosexuality in very great detail in somewhere in the next 4 to 6 weeks. I'm not sure of the date because I'm not finished writing the sermon yet, but we're going to come back and we're going to talk about this, so I'm not running and taking my little slap shots and then running off going, oh no, I don't have time to talk about it. Look, we're going to come back to this because it's important that we understand. But at this point, there's a question that comes to my mind, all right? And the question is this. Most people in the homosexual community will tell you that they believe that homosexual behavior is a natural part of life because this is the way they were born. All right? There's been a recent surge in the existence and the activity of people who propose that the Bible does not condemn homosexual activity. They're becoming clergy, all right, pastors, priests, all kinds of clergy, and they're claiming that God is supporting their choice. I'm not sure what Bible they're reading. The Bible that I read in the book of Exodus, it points out, all right, in the Old Testament, the laws that God had set, God said that anyone who was caught participating in sexual activity that was of the same sex was to be killed. The book of Genesis shows that God took 2 cities. I'm not talking 2 little towns or neighborhoods, but 2 cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, and He didn't just bomb them or set them on fire. He removed them from the face of the earth because of the rampant homosexual activity. Now listen, there's a lot more of the gay community that does not ascribe to Christianity that'll still tend to gravitate toward evolution or natural selection or nothing at all of a spiritual nature. But no matter which camp gets their votes, here's the question. How does an organism that evolves and changes in response to a need to survive, right? It changes to perpetuate its existence. How does such an organism ever choose the path that eliminates the reproductive cycle requiring 2 different sexes? How can that be a natural anything? To me, this is just a very big contradiction to the idea of nature as it exists itself. What's also interesting to note is that of all the species on the planet, human species is the only species to behave this way. There are no plants and there are no animals that demonstrate same-sex activity. This cannot be seen as anything but a contradiction. One as bold and as blatant as proposing that God does not have a problem with homosexual behavior. Listen, as it is with drugs, sex is a monster. If fed perpetually, will grow to these uncontrollable proportions, resulting in a depth of depravity and of captivity from which only the power and the mercy of the sovereign God of all can rescue. But He can. Look at this, Luke 17, 26 to 29. Just as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be in the days of the Son of Man. People went on eating, drinking, marrying, giving in marriage until the day that Noah boarded the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them all. It will be the same as it was in the days of Lot. People went on eating, drinking, buying, selling, planting, building. But on the day that Lot left Sodom, fire and sulfur rained from heaven and destroyed them all. Listen, it is my belief that there's only one other time in human history that represented such deviation from the intended, established sexual boundaries. And at that point, God was so infuriated with His creation's choice that He wiped them out with a flood. The only life that was preserved, listen to this, the only life preserved was Noah and his family, which were all married couples. Here's the other interesting fact. Animals were the only other thing that boarded the ark, and my whole life, I never understood why the language was written this way until now. But it says that the animals boarded the ark in pairs, each male and female of its kind. It's going to be interesting. Come back for that study, but let's move on. All right? 1 Samuel 8, 1 to 3. When Samuel grew old, he appointed his sons as judges of Israel. His eldest son was called Joel, and his second one Abijah. They were judges at Beersheba. His sons did not follow his example, but seduced by the love of money, took bribes and gave biased verdicts. Matthew 6:24. No one can be loyal to 2 masters. He is either bound to hate one and love the other, or support one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and the power of money at the same time. So where are we going next? Money, right? We can't live very well without it, can we? It's a necessary variable in the equation if we expect to exist. But it can become toxic to our lives, and it can produce the devastating results of bondage as deep and as consuming as any of the other potential chains or freedoms. Money is an object. It's a tool that has become so objectified to such a degree that everything else, marriages, families, lives, futures, jobs, it can all be destroyed in the quest to gather it. Just like all of the other potential chains, money is a monster whose appetite takes no prisoners once the wisdom of God's boundaries have been breached. Whether it's in the life of the one pursuing it, or the collateral damage that has now become the lives that have been involuntarily ensnared in this, money can become the unquenchable thirst, whose rage and destruction increases exponentially and destroys everything that was meant to be helped by its use. Many lives have been lost, dead. More lives have been sent behind bars forever because freedom to choose chose to ignore all the warning signs that Jesus gave us about money. See, the object is not the problem. It's the love of that thing, the desire to have more. It's that concept of needing to get more that changes carefree when we've got it to captivity when we got to have one more dollar. That elusive path to financial freedom often gets twisted. It gets diverted and rerouted by the enemy because what began as an opportunity to gather, to accumulate, to make life a little easier, eventually and ironically ends up costing the greedy pursuer everything. It's yet another example of taking the lie and inserting it right in the middle of the truth, trying to validate it by association if we're not careful to separate the counterfeit from the authentic. Look at Ezekiel 7:19. Throw away your money. Toss it out like worthless rubbish, for it will have no value in that day of wrath. It will neither satisfy nor feed you, for your love of money is the reason for your sin. Hebrews 13:5. Keep your lives free from the love of money and be satisfied with what you have. For God said, I will never leave you. I will never abandon you. All right, can you see a pattern in all these things? All right, sex, love, money, language, the freedom to choose. The object becomes the obsession that eventually becomes the obliteration of everything that should have been, that still could be if God's boundaries were recognized and maintained. Look, God does not sit on his little perch in heaven looking down on his creation demanding that they grovel in misery. On the contrary, God gave his life to offer freedom from the corruption of the things that he provided for us to enjoy. God did not establish boundaries to keep us from enjoying freedom, but to preserve it. An intelligent, responsible parent might allow their kids access to candy, right? But what do they coach them on? Moderation, right? Candy has its place in life. It can add some nice things, right? But if the boundaries are not recognized and maintained, listen, if they're not recognized and maintained, the effects can be devastating to a child's weight, to their overall health, teeth, complexion, behavior. If not kept in check, what was intended as a freedom to enjoy will become a chain that will destroy a life that was meant for so much more. Are you seeing this? Look, fire. Here's another example. What do we use it for? For light, for warmth. We can cook on it. Ambiance. There's a lot of really great reasons and uses for fire that can contribute positively to our lives, right? But if left unchecked and unaccounted for, it will produce a rampage of destruction to property, to health, and to life. As somebody who's been severely burned in an accident years ago, I can tell you that burns are the most painful thing you can ever endure. Unparalleled by any other pain. And I've had casts, I've had broken bones, I've been punched in the face, I've been through some pain, and I'm telling you, burns are so far beyond anything you can imagine until you've had one. Fire. Just like all of the other potential freedoms that could become chains, it's meant to enhance our life. But when the boundaries are removed, when the boundaries are no longer there, then it becomes something that's out of control. It becomes a consumer whose rage and destruction increases exponentially the longer that it's left unchecked and outside of God's boundaries. It's no coincidence that the disintegrating of God's boundaries is exactly relative to the depravity of man. The Bible continues to be proven correct as its predictions regarding the morality and the physical condition of the world continue to become reality. Are you following this? All right. The social violence end rises as the true concept of parenting end of the teeter-totter plunges. That whole accountability, responsibility, consequences for your actions thing. All those people that are out there with their no bullying signs, no bullying, no bullying, we're not going to tolerate that, are the same people that are simultaneously trying to remove a parent's ability to discipline in the home, and then we walk around wondering why there are 9-year-olds stabbing their peers to death on playgrounds, how we have high school students and college people that formulate these intricate plans involving explosives and automatic weapons to massacre people on campuses across America. Look, this is not about gun control. This is way beyond that because weapons are not any more accessible now than they've ever been. But research, data, and statistics are proving that in every single case of campus violence, from Sandy Hook, which was elementary, to Columbine, which was high school, to Virginia Tech, which was college, doesn't matter. In every single case, those assailants were currently taking or had just been recently off of behavior modification meds. Today's society doesn't want to parent by participation. They want to parent by pill and hope to be their kid's friend. This is not within the boundaries of God's plan. This is not about the controlling of the guns. It's about the disintegrating of the boundaries that God established to maintain balance. It's the result of people exercising their freedom to disregard God's boundaries that life needed in order to function the way it was intended. You seeing this? If people are not accusing God of trying to take away their freedoms to live life the way they want to, which, by the way, has created the hostile, corrupt, perverse world in which we live, if they're not accusing God of trying to take away their freedoms, they're blaming Him for the mess that's been made. They use the condition of the world. They say there could be no loving God because a loving God would never allow the horrible things to happen in this world. You ever heard that? All right, let me see if I can add a little light to the lunacy that is this logic. All right, we've all heard somebody say this. There could be no God. They disregard Him and they trash Him. They refuse to acknowledge Him. And they use the condition of our world as the basis of proof to say He doesn't exist. But if He does exist, then He can't be a God of love, because a God of love would never allow such horrible things to happen. Do you realize how stupid this is? Listen, this makes as much sense as that person taking their garbage from the kitchen and out back and throwing it in their pool and then getting all angry and indignant and mocking the pool company who installed the pool every time their commercials come on TV. I mean, really, who's to blame for what's happening, right? Oh, but they run at the mouth. At everyone they hear, every time somebody talks about life with a pool, or maybe even adding that change to their lives, maybe they've started to go to church, maybe there's something to this God thing. Oh no. They've made trash in this company an art form, insisting that they're liars and they're deceivers because this is not what they're experiencing. Their pool stinks. It reeks from the rotting garbage they continue to throw into it, and then they blame the pool company for what? Their choices. And then they get with some other people. I love this part. They get with other people who make the same terrible choices, not recommended by the manufacturer, right? Intent on putting that company out of business on the premise that they shouldn't be considered a quality pool company because this is not their experience, right? They have no accountability for their part in this situation. They accept no responsibility for the circumstances created by their choices. And then, what about the neighbors, right? Don't they have to endure all of these choices that create all this unwarranted and unnecessary discomfort and misery? Should they join the group too and go after the pool company? Does it matter at all that they're enjoying their pool? Their pool adds a whole new dimension to their lives, a genuine positive effect. Should they just disregard the experience they're having with the item they received from the manufacturer, functioning within the specifications? Are you getting the parallel to this? I mean, are you seeing this? Should we all be expected to join the group of those who don't want to follow the rules, who don't want to work within the boundaries that God set to actually have a good experience? Listen, for all of those out there that may be using this excuse, the truth is it's time for you to stop using the horrible conditions of the world to justify your actions. It's time you started using the life you've been given, the product that you were given from the manufacturer in the way it was intended, so that you can experience life as it was intended. Defaming and degrading, disrespecting and disregarding God because of the condition of the world only makes you the proud owner of your own personal landfill with a diving board. The world is all jacked up, not because a God of love is MIA. No, but because the enemy of the world is very existent. And they've convinced you that the stake to which you're chained is the truth. They play and they promote all the negative angles. They cast all the blame and accept none of the responsibility. It's time that people came to the realization that we've got a life to live. You only get one. And you've got to live it on this planet. But more importantly, that the choices are all yours to make and there are consequences for your choices. Do you see now why it's not, it makes no sense to say there cannot be a God of love because of all the horrible things in the world? Ridiculous. Look at Matthew 11, 28 to 30. Come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. All of you, take up my yoke and learn from me, because I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for yourselves. My yoke is easy, and my burden is light. John 6:37. Everyone the Father gives me will come to me, and the one who comes to me, I will never cast out. John 10, 7 to 10. So Jesus said again, I assure you, I am the door of the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep didn't listen to them. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will come in and go out and find pasture. A thief comes only to steal, to kill, and destroy. I have come so that they may have a life and may have it in abundance. John 8:36. Therefore, if the Son sets you free, you really will be free. I think it's intriguing how people will act so sacrificially, financially, in an effort to make sure that they've got a chance to live comfortably in their later years. They'll be sacrificial in practicing their craft or their trade, even their hobbies, in an effort to become proficient, if not professional, neither of which offers any guarantees or promises beyond a couple years. So many people refuse to submit to the one who claims to be their designer, their creator, and their mentor. They're not even interested in finding out if his promises, which have eternal implications, are even true or not. But they say, they have the audacity to say that he cannot be as he claims to be because of some irrelevant variable, the conditions of the world. Right? They refuse to offer any credit or loyalty. They insist that God must prove himself before they will ever acknowledge his existence or bow to his authority. And interestingly enough, these are the people who will deny the existence of an issue of pride in their lives. Does your pride need a vacation? So that you can concede your need for the wisdom and the instruction of someone more advanced than you? Are you currently exercising your freedom to choose, living a lifestyle that is eventually going to end in your captivity? Or are you already there? Maybe you've just been chained to the stake for too long, and you're convinced by the lie that there is no real freedom from God with his promises and his word. It's not too late. You can live in freedom without fear, following confidently the one who said, there's going to be trials. There's going to be some difficulties. But take a deep breath. Relax. I've already overcome all of it. And I want to show you the path through it. Today's the day. You break the strongholds of the enemy in your life. And you begin living in the freedom that Jesus paid with his life to provide for you. Submit your life. Receive his gift of forgiveness and freedom. And then commit to follow him wherever He leads you with everything you've got for the rest of your days. God wants to show you how it is so very possible to live and enjoy life in spite of it all. Come, have a refreshing swim and be safe within the boundaries that He has established. Holy Father, God, we exalt Your name. We honor You. We're sorry that we can't even give You all the praise and the glory that You deserve. But we thank You for this information You've shared with us, the analogy, the ability to see one more way that the truth is that You are not the enemy here. You have not become complacent. You have not disregarded us. You are the sovereign, holy God of all. And in spite of what people have done and their choices and the situation in which we live that's been created, You still stand and You offer freedom. You offer Your protection if we will just submit and follow You and live within the boundaries that You have established. You've promised that You'll take care of us. So I ask that You would allow us to really think about this, to come to grips with where we stand, with what change might be established in our lives, with what freedoms that You've made available to us that maybe we're not quite enjoying the way we should because we haven't submitted our lives to You. I ask that if there's somebody here that is being held captive by something that was supposed to be a freedom but has become a chain, that You would allow them to give this to You, that they'd be submitted, that they would just fall on their face in front of You and say, okay, God, I'm giving it all to You. I'll be whatever You design me to be. I will follow You no matter where You lead with everything I've got for the rest of my days. I ask that You would show them the power that exists only in Your mercy and in Your omnipotence. That You would open their eyes, that You would shatter their hearts and cause them to see that they need to submit to You. We thank You for how You bless us, how you go to such trouble to continue to pour into us and to give us new information to allow us to be successful. So we ask that You would allow us to dwell on this. We thank You in Jesus' name so that You, Father, are glorified.